How can I get the seller to accept payments when they want cash? All right, some of you are going to get this. And some of you it's going to go whew. You can generate cash from any debt instrument, whether it be land contract, trust deed, agreement for deed, wraparound mortgage, or whatever. You can generate cash by selling off a portion of the note. You can sell off as many payments as it takes to generate the amount of cash the seller wants. As soon as those payments are collected by the person or entity you sell them to, the remainder of the note will revert back to the seller. This is very common. This is nothing new. This is nothing weird. This happens all over the country every day. It's very easy for you to arrange the purchase of a portion of that note. In fact, in this module will be a list of buyers for those payments if you wish to do that. How many people in this room would buy portions of notes or are able to sell them to note buyers? Okay, hold your hands up. Hi. Gosh, a bunch of you. So you understand what I'm talking about? And so it's not going to be difficult to sell off these notes, but let's see how we're going to go about this. Step one, determine how much cash they need to solve their problem. Okay? Step two is contact a paper buyer to get a current acceptable yield, and then use a financial calculator to figure out how many payments they must give up to receive the desired cash and an acceptable yield to a paper buyer. An example, seller taking back a note of $100,000 at 7% for 30 years with a payment of $665.30 needs $25,000 in cash now. Now, since you're not going to bring that cash to the closing, you need an alternative plan to generate that cash for the seller. To determine how many payments they must sell, follow these steps on your calculator. You put in the $25,000 that they need now and you press the PV button for present value. You then put in the payment that is already existing on the note. Then you put in the yield in which your note buyer says is acceptable that they will buy that note at. You will find that a 15% yield is acceptable just about any day and time. The truth is, right now, you can sell off paper considerably less than that, all the way down to 12% and maybe even lower. In our example, we're going to use 15%. All I'm saying here is that this 7% note is not going to be attractive to a paper buyer at 7%. In order for the paper buyer to get the 15% yield that they require, they're going to have to discount these payments to where if they loan the money out at 15%, they would get the same kind of return. So all we have to do is figure out how many months of payments at $665.30 for $25,000 does it take to equal a 15% return on that investment. And the answer, by solving for the number, equals 52. It takes 52 payments at $665 a month to get a 15% return on your $25,000 investment. Who missed it? Yes.
If I understand this correctly, you've sat down with a seller, said, I want to buy your house owner financing, but they need $25,000 cash now. So instead of using your own money, you're going to a note buyer to figure out a way to get the $25,000 cash and they're giving up payments.
Yep.
Fantastic.
In fact, Kevin, follow this through. In my example, didn't I buy the house for $140 with 5 down?
Yes.
If I can show that seller how they can get this 25, may I even create this thing with nothing down?
Yep.
As long as I get them their 25. Well, what if they need 50?
Still works.
All I got to do is change the $25,000 to 50, use the same formula, and it'll take more payments to get them 50. All I got to say is, you tell me how much cash you want, and I'll tell you how many payments you have to give up to get it.
So at the end of 4 1/3 years, they're going to start getting their payments back.
That's correct. They're going to start getting payments again. And then I'm going to go on to say, you know something, Ray? When that 52 months is up, If you want, we'll sell off another chunk for you and get you some more cash. Or you can just keep on collecting the payments, whatever you wish. You contact the paper buyer and you arrange a purchase of the payments at closing or shortly thereafter.
What are they called?
Well, they're called mortgage bankers. They're called finance companies. You know, the finance companies where you live will buy this paper in a heartbeat. Many of them. You don't have to look very far to buy people who buy payments, folks. People who buy income streams are all over the place. They're in your newspaper. They says, I buy trust deeds or I buy mortgages. They're in your yellow pages in the form of finance companies. Mortgage brokers all over the land do this. And guess what? I do it. So if you need somebody to buy paper in this kind of a scenario, you ain't got to look far. Don't worry about selling the payments. That's going to be a piece of cake in this case. Look at this from the note buyer's point of view, folks. What loan-to-value ratio is this note buyer into this deal for? He has a $25,000 investment, and in fact, he happens to be in first position on a $140,000 sale. Is he at any risk whatsoever? Hello? None. Absolutely not. This is a piece of cake to sell. Most of the note buyers wouldn't even care who's making these payments. They wouldn't even care about the credit. They wouldn't care about nothing. This loan to value is so low it's irrelevant. They're in first position because if this thing goes into default, they get their $25,000 back before the seller gets any money. Okay? Now the seller owns a piece of this note. They're only buying a partial of this note. So the seller's not out of the picture. This guy is going to only get what he's got invested. And the seller gets the rest. Okay? Well, suppose, first of all, that this seller doesn't even want to take, I figured it up, by the way. The seller is giving up $38,000 worth of payments for $25,000 in cash. On the other hand, it takes him 52 months to get the payments, doesn't it? Time value of money. Cash today is worth a lot more than payments strung out over a period of time. The seller has to have this need for this cash, or they're not going to accept this. And sometimes the seller's just going to want to see you come out of pocket with some money. It's not a problem, is it? Can you come out of pocket with some money when you know a few days later you're going to get it back plus?
If you're working with a conventional lender that will loan 70-75% loan to value or an investor, then you couldn't sell the paper if the seller was willing to take back a second, because they would be in second position, right?
You can sell a second mortgage, but nobody's going to buy it higher than a 75% loan to value ratio. Do you want me to explain that? Didn't mean to turn this into a paper course, but let's do it. All right. Let's say we got a $100,000 value. Let's say a $100,000 sales price. All right. And there is a $50,000 first mortgage. And you sell the house for $10,000. I mean $10,000 down, and the seller takes back a $40,000 second. This is a second. This is a first. This is a down payment. All right? Now you go to try to sell off his $40,000 second. Any portion of this $40,000 that is above $25,000 is absolutely worthless to a note buyer. What do I need to be to create a 75% loan-to-value ratio? I got a $50,000 first. $25,000 added to that gets me at a 75% loan-to-value ratio, does it not? 50 plus 25 is 75,000. 75,000 to 100,000 is 75%. No note buyer that I've ever met is going to buy anything above 75% LTV. So that means he's only really concerned about the $25,000 below. But here's what's going to happen. Let's say this $40,000 mortgage has a $400 a month payment. I don't know, for 15 years. What he's going to do is he's going to take his calculator and he's going to put that $400 payment in there. He's going to put 15 years worth of them in there, 180 of them. He's going to plug in his 15% yield. If it comes out above $25,000, let's say that the answer to that came out to $28,000. He's going to take $3,000 right off that 28 and whack it down because he knows that that is the absolute most he's going to pay for that note. Anything above that 28, he ain't coming out of pocket with because it puts him higher, 75% loan to value. Does that make any sense?